Whenever someone mentions Richard Dawkins, the selfish gene, it's like an instant brain upgrade is about to happen. And you set this one in, ready for a whole new angle on evolution, I bet.
Absolutely. Dawkins doesn't just explain biology. He gives you an entirely new framework to understand, well, life itself.
And to think, it all starts by looking through the lens of a gene. That's a far cry from the survival of the fittest stuff we learn in school. Dawkins takes it to a whole other dimension, wouldn't you say?
He does. He argues that the real driving force behind evolution, it isn't the species or even the individual for that matter, it's the gene.
Really?
Yeah, we become almost like vehicles.
Vehicles?
Yeah, survival machines, he calls us, crafted by our genes for their own perpetuation.
Okay, hold on. Vehicles. So we're talking cars, trains, spaceships. For genes, that's a wild way to picture the human body.
It's a powerful image. Imagine genes as these, master architects, and we become the skyscrapers they design, meticulously crafted to ensure the genes themselves survive.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all about passing those genes on. And what better way than a well-designed body that lives long enough to reproduce?
So we're not just talking survival of the fittest anymore. We're talking survival of the fittest gene.
You got it. And just like in the business world, not all genes are created equal.
Right.
Some are just better at playing the survival game. Dawkins, he explains this constant competition between genes, the winners, the ones who build the best survival machines, which happen to be us. Those genes get passed down.
Okay, so I'm picturing this gene market where they're all competing. But what makes one gene a better investment than another?
That's where it gets really fascinating. Dawkins introduces concepts like stable polymorphisms.
Stable what?
Polymorphisms, it sounds complicated, but think of it like a balanced ecosystem. But for genes, different versions of genes, they exist at the same time, right?
Okay.
And their success depends on how well they cooperate with other genes in the pool. It's this delicate dance of genetics.
All right, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here, but something's been bugging me. If we're just vessels for these self-serving genes, how do we explain things like altruism?
Yeah.
Like, why do bees sacrifice themselves for the hive? That doesn't sound very selfish gene to me.
Yeah. You've hit on a really important point, and Dawkins, he tackles it head on with the concept of kin selection. This is where things get really interesting. See, genes aren't just looking out for themselves in one body. They're also looking out for copies of themselves in other bodies, like our relatives.
So my genes want my siblings to thrive because we share similar DNA.
Exactly. Genes can actually encourage altruistic behavior towards relatives because they share those same genes. Protecting your family means protecting those shared genes, giving them a better chance of continuing to the next generation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So those heroic bees sacrificing themselves for the hive are actually ensuring the survival of their own genes through their relatives.
Precisely. It might seem counterintuitive, but from the gene's viewpoint, it makes perfect sense. They're playing a long game of genetic legacy.
Wow, my perspective on family just got a whole lot more complex. It's not just about individual survival anymore. It's about family, but on a genetic level.
Right. And it gets even more intriguing when you look at family dynamics through this lens. Dawkins uses kin selection to explain things like sibling rivalry, for example.
Wait, sibling rivalry? I thought we were all about family sticking together here.
Of course. But remember, genes want to maximize their chances of survival above all else.
Yeah.
So even though siblings share genes, they're also in competition for resources, parental attention,
Oh, okay.
Those genes, they want to make sure their vehicle, the individual, gets the biggest slice of the pie, leading to, well, sibling rivalry.
It's like Shakespearean drama, but with a Darwinian twist. Are genes pulling the strings of our lives like puppet masters?
In a way, you could say that. Dawkins proposes that genes are the policymakers. And our incredible brains, well, they're the executives carrying out those policies. They build our brains and they program them with instincts to navigate the world.
Right.
But those instructions, they're all about maximizing the gene's survival, not necessarily our own happiness.
This whole gene-centric view is seriously making me question everything. But I have a feeling we're about to go even deeper down the rabbit hole, right? What about this extended phenotype Dawkins talks about?
Now that's where things get really mind-bending.
Oh boy.
Dawkins suggests that genes don't just influence our bodies, their reach extends beyond our skin, influencing the world around us.
Hold on, beyond our skin. So you're saying my genes could be affecting my environment right now. How is that even possible?
It's about understanding the true scope of a gene's influence. Dawkins uses the example of caddisfly larvae. these little creatures, they build protective cases for themselves out of stones. And the types of cases they construct, they're determined by their genes.
So their genes influence their little stone houses.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. The hardness of the stones is also considered an extended phenotypic effect of the caddisfly's genes.
Really?
Yeah. If a gene can influence the color of your eyes, it's not a stretch to say a gene can also influence the type of house a caddisfly builds, even if it's outside its body.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. This is getting really interesting.
And it's not just about caddisflies. Think about beaver dams.
Okay.
Those structures, those masterpieces of engineering,
Right.
they completely reshape the environment around them. And it all stems from the genes that drive those beavers to build in the first place.
So a beaver's genes aren't just building a better beaver, they're building a better world for that beaver to live in.
You've got it. It challenges our whole idea of where one organism ends and another begins. And it gets even wilder when you think about, like, parasites.
Oh, gosh.
Dawkins uses the example of flukes that can actually influence the thickness of the shells of the snails they infect.
Wait, so the parasite's genes are manipulating the host's body for their own benefit.
Exactly. A thicker shell means better protection for the snail, which means a safer home for the fluke. It highlights this idea that genes can have these far-reaching ripple effects, even across species.
Okay, I need a minute to process all of this.
Hmm.
It's like you said, Dawkins really challenges us to rethink our assumptions. This extended phenotype concept really throws a wrench in the whole nature versus nurture debate, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If genes can influence the world around us, where does that leave free will?
The age-old question. Dawkins doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he offers some really interesting points to ponder. He suggests that even if our genes laid the groundwork for our behavior, we still have the capacity to make choices within that framework.
So like our genes provide the blueprint, but we're the ones who decide how to build the house.
Precisely. You can resist our impulses,
Okay.
right? We can make decisions that go against our instincts, even if it means going against what might be considered in our immediate genetic self-interest. That's where our sense of agency comes in, even if it's shaped by, our biology.
So free will isn't necessarily black or white. It's more like a spectrum.
That's a great way to put it. And it really highlights that this gene-centric perspective isn't about saying we're predetermined robots. It's about understanding the evolutionary forces that have shaped us, not dictating how we should live our lives.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. It's not about denying our humanity. It's about understanding it on a deeper level.
Right, absolutely. And it's about appreciating how evolution created this incredible complexity, from our genes to the very societies we build.
I have to say, this deep dive into the selfish gene has completely changed how I see things. But before we wrap up, I can't help but think about something we skipped earlier. What about the evolution of sex and family dynamics? Dawkins had some pretty wild examples in there about birds and cuckoo birds, if I remember correctly.
Oh, absolutely. Remember those birds of paradise with their, extravagant plumage?
Oh, yeah.
That's a perfect example of sexual selection at work. Females choose their mates, and they're attracted to those flashy features because they signal good genes. It's all about finding the best partner to pass those genes on to the next generation.
It's like a genetic beauty contest.
Yeah.
But then Dawkins goes on to talk about cuckoos, which are like the con artists of the bird world.
They're the ultimate brood parasites. They lay their eggs in other birds' nests and let those unsuspecting foster parents raise their young. And get this, cuckoo chicks are often hardwired to push the other eggs out of the nest,
Oh, no?
eliminating the competition for food and attention. Talk about ruthless family dynamics.
It's like something straight out of a nature documentary. But Dawkins uses these examples to make a larger point about evolution, right?
Exactly. He's showing us that evolution isn't always, pretty. It's about genes finding any way to replicate, even if it means some pretty cutthroat tactics. And family life, with all its complexities and conflicts, is a prime example of this.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how genes shape our world.
Oh.
And before I forget, you mentioned something earlier called memes.
Ah, yes. Memes are like genes, but for culture. Just like genes carry biological information, memes carry cultural information, ideas, behavior, styles. And just like genes, they can replicate and spread, competing for our attention.
So when I share a funny video online, I'm actually spreading a meme.
You got it. And the more people share that video, the more successful that meme becomes. It's cultural evolution in action.
Wow. The selfish gene has given me so much to think about. Thank you so much for being my guide through this deep dive. It's truly changed how I see the world.
The pleasure was all mine. Dawkins' book is a real eye-opener, and now that you've had this taste of gene-centered thinking, you'll probably start seeing those selfish genes at work everywhere.
That's both exciting and a little bit terrifying. But that's for another deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.